Hello and welcome to your in-depth deep dive video into the Aquarius new moon of the 11th of February at 7:05 p.m. Universal Central Time. Welcome. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, I'd be honoured if you did so now. Now I'm going to tell you about the actual event, what the Aquarius new moon represents, but I'm also going to tell you about the actual moment in time when the new moon occurs and what the other planetary configurations are, because that's highly revelatory. Please stay with me too, because then I'm going to be sharing each of the 12 zodiac signs, your forecast for the next month. Now, you can also grab the chance to check out a one-to-one personal consultation with me. Please see the link beneath this video and read my testimonials. I work through the mediums of Western tropical astrology, of course, and I use transits like all astrologers, but also progressions and directions. And further to that, sometimes I also use draconic astrology too. So if you'd like to elevate your interest in astrology from your sun sign in a more affordable way, please check out my personal horoscope reports below. You can get 12 months forecast and a character analysis, totally unique to you based on your time, date and place of birth, 30% off on a special offer. Also see the link below. So please see the wheel on the screen, and you can see that the ascendant for this event is actually Virgo, and just tucked up that football that you can see with the square across it is actually the path of fortune. So that's right on the ascendant. So that's saying to us, if we're virtuous about our personal health approach, it can be a very positive thing to do. Yet on the other side of the heavens, you can see that Neptune, dreamy Neptune, is opposing our ascendant on this moment. So that's suggesting that we can get drained. And I think the draining can come from information that's publicly available. And part of the reason for that is you can see right at the top of this wheel, the North Node, which is almost like the global emotional direction of travel, is in the sign of Gemini, which is all about information, and that's T-square in the ascendant in Virgo, and also that Neptune positioned in the descendant. So that's creating a degree of confusion. So making sure that we check our sources of information is going to be vitally important when we make decisions based on things like vaccines. If you are considering that, other people will be very firmly declining them, which I could completely respect. But you can see in this chart that the actual new moon itself, the position of the sun and the moon, are in the 6th house of this event, which is all about health and well-being. So the more that we can take personal responsibility for what we eat and drink, make sure that we clean our hands very carefully, and we're conscious of our personal approach to hygiene, the better it's going to be in the next month. Now, the other standout aspect in this chart, I think, is the fact that Mars is in a square with Mercury, which can create a kind of extra nervous energy, even more frustration. Now, I did predict at the turn of the year that there would be a lot of civil unrest this year. We've had the farmers' uprising in India. We've had civil disorder in Holland. We've had a very oppressive pushback by the Chinese government in Hong Kong. We've had Alexei Navalny, the leader of the Russian opposition to Vladimir Putin, has been rearrested, and there's been lots of his supporters on the street and lots of people being arrested. Of course, we had the uprising on Capitol Hill, and there's a lot of unease in terms of the union in Great Britain. The individual nations are asserting their individual desires much more authoritatively. So I think that square between Mercury, which is exalted in Aquarius, so it's very much about the higher values, and the more resistant energy of Mars, which in the sign of Taurus is kind of the old way, it's traditionality, and it's also can be linked to money. Now, another thing you may have seen in a recent phenomenon is a run on shares on the games store in the USA, and what we've had is lots of small investors have invested about $40 each, not all of them, but many of them, to push back on those big hedge funds that bet short out on prices going down, and it's meant that those big shorters have lost a huge amount of money, and that's people coming together collectively, a collective shorting that's been done by individual small penny traders, as they've known. That's very indicative of the Aquarius age, pushing back on the old money of Mars in the sign of Taurus. Now, of course, Uranus, very unsettled in the sign of Taurus. It's in its fall, it's not its best location, and that in this chart is in a square with Saturn, and this is the aspect that really dominates the whole of this year, first 7 months in particular, and the last 5 weeks. So this is that desire of Uranus to shake things up, meeting the resistance of Saturn in Aquarius, which can be much more to do with traditional values than people think. People think Aquarius energy is all future orientated, all zany, all governed by Uranus. It's not. It has that, if you like, duality about it. So a lot of tension still buzzing around. But we do have an absolutely glorious link between Jupiter and Venus. And when I look, actually, they're in the 5th house, which is about personal expression, it's about joyfulness, about sociability. They're actually conjunct my natal moon and Venus, so I'm having a Venus return there. So that's jolly, jolly nice. I'll take that. But for us all, that's a glorious combination, because that really is about understanding what we can gain from working together, but not losing our sense of individuality. So we become almost like worker cooperatives, where we are the individual business, but we market our goods through a wider holding business. So this happens in a lot of agricultural businesses, and particularly in places like Italy and Spain, where they've always had the foresight to know that individual farmers need a marketing group that has the time and the skills to take their produce and get it sold around the world. But it's something that's been kind of resisted a lot more in the United Kingdom, and I don't know, I could be wrong, perhaps I suspect also in the USA. But I think Jupiter is very much about higher values, and it's about enthusiasm and optimism and, of course, good luck. And Venus is very much about joyfulness, but in a very independent way in the sign of Aquarius. So I think this combination is really quite beautiful. But we do have Saturn there, as I said, in that right angle with Uranus. And that's saying to us that if we try to push too quick on anything, we're going to meet resistance. So although change is in the works, we still are dealing with the physical reality of our personal freedoms being limited by rules and regulations, of the fact that we can't freely associate, which is not good for personkind, that we've had so long of this now that people have gone beyond board and they've tried all the different diversions and learnt skills, and now it's becoming very wearing, and people are really feeling the psychological pain of this, and particularly those people who live on their own but not through choice. I mean, obviously some people are perfectly happy to work from home, live on their own, but that's not a choice for everyone. So we have this big cluster of energy which features Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, and also Mercury, all in the 5th house of creativity. So we are being asked to think about how we can use our talents in a different way within the limitations that are there, get more organised with the sun and the new moon in the 6th house, be as efficient and aware of our diet and exercise as we possibly can. Try to bring a bit of purity to our approach. There could be some general confusion out there in terms of information, and I think a lot of citizens can be feeling very unsettled and prepared to push back on big government, big power and authority, which is seen to be unfair. And it's interesting, I was watching a piece on Channel 4 News in Britain the other night, and the Greek finance minister, from when they had the Labour government there, when they went into dispute with the EU, he's a very, very bright man. I think he lectures at the London School of Economics, and he was basically saying that we just now, governments don't rule the world. People don't realise that actually it's the big internet monopolies that are ruling the world. They have our information. They have control over us because we're so dependent on them, and they don't redistribute their profits in a fair way, and they're deeply uncompetitive in the way that they operate their platforms. So that's something that I feel is going to receive more and more attention from government, from individuals, as we realise that the power and control they've had over us is not healthy. And that's my prediction for the next couple of years. Also for this next month, sadly, I feel we may see some more earthquakes, landslides, perhaps even a tsunami. That is a possibility too. But please stay with me. I'm going to share the individual zodiac signs, beginning with Aries. Hi Aries, and welcome. So what does this mean for you? Well, the cluster of energy in the sign of Aquarius is very much about your future. It's about how you associate with other people. The last couple of years have been really heavy, I feel, in terms of responsibilities. But if you're a very goal-orientated ram, it's possible that you did break through some kind of glass ceiling and punch into that role that really you'd been working towards for a very long time. For other Aries people, there may have been a sense of dissatisfaction. And even though you may have achieved that goal, actually once you got there, it seemed like a hollow victory. So I think for Aries people generally, this particular new moon is very much about resetting your aims. And when I say aims, I don't necessarily mean in a physical, material way. I mean in terms of your higher purpose. So even if you've got a really good job, there may be something you find yourself craving for over the next month that goes beyond that. Some motivating factor that joins you together with others or connects you to the more individualistic side of your nature. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you need to turn your back on the hard-earned gains that you've got, or if you're working hard in a job which is not completely fulfilling, you know you've still got to pay the bills. Us astrologers can be outrageously idealistic in what we suggest to people, and for me, who tries to be very earthy in my approach, it's very important to understand what real life is for real people. So I'm not saying you should throw the proverbial baby out with the bathwater, but if you do find yourself mixing with different types of people or embracing different types of philosophies, becoming more future orientated and being less motivated by sheer tangible goals and achievement and status, it really wouldn't be a surprise. So Taurus, of course, you continue to have Mars and Uranus in your sign. So that's given you a sense of devilment, really, that perhaps in the past you may have had that there. You knew when to stand firm and be much more resistant to things that you thought were unfair, but your general setting as a person is persistence and longevity. You like a degree of security and stability. But this chart is telling me, with all the energies in your 10th house, that you're wanting more challenges in life, more excitement, and that could be in the world of work. It could be to do with a property matter. Somehow or another, you're wanting to push outside your comfort zone. But of course, in any transition that goes on for any of us, it's not 100% pure and lovely and uplifting process. So any kind of move or starting a new position or applying for jobs or retraining or dealing with different line managers or people beneath us all takes a degree of process management. And life isn't a straight line. It does throw up serial challenges. So I feel for you at the moment, you are feeling that you want to see more tangible rewards for what you've invested over a long period of time. But you also want to be much more true to your individuality as well. Not quite so easy to get both of those things covered, to fit in and comply to what's expected in some kind of orthodox environment, but at the same time do so on your terms. So there has to be a bit of give and take. So I think that's really what you've got to encounter over the next month, but definitely an opportunity to make progress. Now, Gemini, the prevailing angle between the North Node and Neptune in your sector of work is causing some real issues, I feel. On the face of it, the North Node in your sign, and it's going to be there until the early part of 22, is very, very positive, because it's connecting you much more to emotion. And because you are an air sign and therefore logic, so this is like the swords in the tarot, you have this nimble ability to hop between different things and situations. And the North Node is really saying, look, just invest a little bit more in trusting processes, not just thinking them through, but actually using your instincts, which comes from feelings. But of course, the rabble rousers for you are definitely those two in the sign of Taurus. 12th house energy with Mars can be very much linked to the past. Uranus here can be very much linked to your nervous system and your subconscious. Mars can be linked to old angers that have yet to be solved, with the collection of energy in your 9th house, which is about adventure, expansion, education and travel. Yes, you can expand and you can go for new opportunities, but you need to make sure that you're taking that shadow side of your nature with you. So the things that perhaps are a bit rawer and more sensitive about your nature. It's not all about just embracing the Aquarius energy as an air sign, because I do think, you know, there may be some videos out there like this saying it's going to be mega beautiful, it's all going to be beautiful. And unfortunately, it is more complex, but there are still opportunities. And I think it's all about knowledge about you. So the greater your self-knowledge becomes about the deeper side of your nature that perhaps in the past you've been a little bit reluctant to look at, the greater you can prosper, and prosper you can. Now, that brings us to Cancer. So, Cancer, you've got the ascendant in this particular chart, so just talking about the natal chart, not equal house from your sun, that's the first house, is in the third house for you. Very much about ideas. So, I think you can be using your instinctive energies to check out information with Neptune in your 9th solar house to gain more information, but with the North Node tucked away in your 12th house, that's very much about secrets, hidden enemies particularly. So it's possible that you're coming to terms with your own hidden enemies in a way, not people outside of you, within yourself. So the things that have haunted you a little bit, if you are feeling profoundly sensitive at this time, I think the North Node squaring with Neptune is a lot to do with it. But then of course Mars and Uranus are in the part of your horoscope really encouraging you to be very open-minded, a bit more radical, mix with new people, be some part of a collective in some ways, and it may see you change in direction, that combination between Mars and Uranus, in some unexpected switchback ways. Unexpected insofar as people see you as generally a safe pair of hands, someone who's very stable and really appreciates security, obviously because of your moon. But this new moon is in your sector of psychology, of transformations, and sometimes of endings as well as the beginnings. So the new moon in the 8th house, together with the North Node in your 12th and Neptune in your 9th, can see a lot of sensitive information washing around you. Perhaps your interest in anything to do with the occult, personal development, psychology, self-help books is going to deepen even more profoundly in the next month. But also you could do well around a property matter, a business matter. If you are an entrepreneurial person, the biggest danger at the moment is jumping into a situation with someone else, thinking it's all going to be absolutely fine because you both share a common enthusiasm for the subject, the product, the service. And I think that might be a little bit of a trap, because Mars squaring up with Mercury could make you much more impulsive than you usually are, and Uranus squaring with Saturn suggests that there may be some responsibilities that come with this situation that are not clear at the outset. So if you are doing something tactically with finances, I think you really need to microscopically analyze what is going on, not least because of course Mercury is retrograde at this period of time. So if you're trying to find information out about a business matter or loans or investments, do proceed with a bit of caution. But it is a very, very vital new moon, the 8th house. It's very scorpionic essentially. So if you're someone who does like probing in the dark, this is right up your Champs-Élysées. So Leo. So the 7th house new moon is spectacular for relationships. And relationships don't have to just be of the romantic variety. The trouble is that because on this particular chart we've got the ascendant in an opposition with Neptune pretty well, I feel that in a joint financial relationship, there may be some confusion about who contributes or does what. Also, with Uranus and Mars right at the top of your chart, you're feeling much feistier about asserting your authority in situations. Now, people kind of get the fact that you like to be admired. They get the fact that you like to be loved. But they perhaps don't always get that what you really crave is respect. But at the moment, Mars conjunct Uranus is giving you an even greater desire to be recognised for your magnificence. The problem is we can't leverage this on people. They have to make that decision for themselves. And if you do try to almost force people to recognise your hard work, your gifts, your talents, they could almost withhold for you because they kind of realise you want it so much. It's a silly game and it goes on between us humans all the time. And because you've got Saturn square in Uranus and Mercury square in Mars, that can create quite a lot of tension. So the best way to counteract that at the moment for you is through cooperation. The 7th house is very Libran, so it's very much about listening, developing our listening skills. We're all people that can learn more and more in that regard, because we live in a world where everybody wants to have an opinion, and not so much do people want to actually have discourse, like say how one person feels, the other person listens and then shares how they feel. It's very urgent, it's very dramatic, it's very, this is what I believe. It's a kind of fight for who can shout the loudest almost. And I think what you're going to find is you've got a glorious opportunity to improve your relationships by using the extra confidence of Mars in your 10th house, but by using quiet power. It's almost like the steel fist inside the velvet glove. If you show your hand, if you show that you demand that people respect you, I don't think they will. But if you're looking for a line manager or a boss or a job, it is going to be through cultivating good relations that there can be an improvement. It's also possible that you may reach out to somebody who you already know and say there's been some kind of distance. There is the potential for an improvement around that, particularly with Venus and Jupiter in such a magnificent conjunction. But with Mercury retrograde, you might think, oh, I can't possibly do this. Mercury is retrograde. I can't do anything with Mercury retrograde. I'm an astrologer who says, go forwards with Mercury retrograde. It could be the time to mend fences because it's in retrograde. Mercury retrograde is about putting right what isn't working that we can influence. We can't influence the things we can't control. So if a parcel goes astray because Mercury retrograde affects the distribution system, that is something that could be to do with Mercury retrograde, but not you personally. So the things we can solve, so with Mercury retrograde in the 7th house of relating, if there is a way to use a bit of détente cordiale to build a warmer rapport with someone, take it. Now, Virgo, of course, in this particular chart, on this particular location, which is Greenwich Mean Time, Universal Central Time, the ascendant is in your sign, but the descendant's in your 7th house. And in fact, broadly since 2012, in terms of sun sign astrology, Neptune has been in your 12th house. So you've probably gone through some interesting times during that period as far as relationships are concerned. And even though a lot of the other zodiac signs really suffered with the stellium in Capricorn last year, you may have, I'm not saying it was a walk in the park. It depends how many planets you've got in Virgo in your natal chart. If it's just the sun and you've got stuff in Libra, for example, which is entirely possible, you may have actually had quite a tough time. If you've got a stellium of energy in Virgo, I think last year when everyone else was feeling it, I think you may have come out a little bit better than some others. So what all this energy is saying in this chart, in the sign of Aquarius, is asking you to use your critical powers of concentration, discrimination, attention to detail, of being able to really home in on what's vitally important. And when it comes to relationships, if there has been some confusion because of Neptune, then what you're being asked to do is try to understand why. And that's that critical mass of energy in the 6th house. But if you made some New Year's resolutions, which have gone by the by, perhaps, it's beer o'clock at 6 p.m. each night just to get through the lockdown, totally understandable, then this new moon is asking you to go back to what you decided in between New Year and Christmas and reset your sense of purpose over achieving that purity, which is so important to you. So things have got a little bit out of balance, out of kilter in any way in your situation. This can be a great time to press the big red button and reset. But that could also be true about work, because I still feel for Virgo people, if you're in a job which is not giving you a sense of satisfaction, it's giving you stress. And part of the stress is part of you wants to manifest a big, more adventurous part of your nature, but the more sacrificing and dedicated side of your soul is wanting to stick to how you've always, well, not always, but often been. So that may mean sticking at a job that's more functional, pays the bills. Perhaps people are pleasant, perhaps you quite like the job, but it may not be very fulfilling. And Mars and Uranus in the sign of Taurus for you is about passion, it's about excitement, it's about shaking things up. But there's another part of you that may resist that. So you could find yourself conflicted on this particular new moon, but there are still opportunities to change things, improve things, and go forwards. So Libra. Now, obviously, because this new moon's in your 5th house, because it's the air triplicity, the other being Gemini, the 5th house is very much about personal expression, romance, and you've got a glorious alliance between your ruler Venus and Jupiter, planets of growth and good fortune. Do you know, if we didn't have the lockdown, I'd just love this chart for you, because I do think Libran people generally have been mauled, not just over the last couple of years, but broadly since 2008, because Uranus was going through Aries and forged the square with Pluto. We had the Arab Spring, if you remember. Then it was Uranus square Jupiter, I think. And then, of course, Saturn and Jupiter back into... certainly in the case of Jupiter, every 12 years back into Capricorn. Saturn inched its way back to Capricorn after a sort of 29.5-year absence. And for you, the last couple of years has been really tough. And it could be that you stuck in there on a situation, perhaps a romance, because it gave you a degree of security. Someone was there. I don't want to play it down, because I hate to feel that you're needy, because if you evoke your cardinality, which is your leadership qualities, you can be so inspirational, but you kind of need to be fired up. Why do I know this? Because I have the Libran ascendant at 2351, which means that it's conjunct Speaker, which is a fixed star, which is a wonderful fixed star, to be honest. So what I would say to you, and me as well, it's all very well being agreeable, it's all very well trying to be a people pleaser, but not if you're giving away your power. So this set of influences at the moment is more encouragement to live your life in your true, authentic self. And that may mean taking a few risks. It may mean being a bit edgy. With Mars in your 8th house of sex, along with Uranus, it could be that you're tempted towards a bit of a fling with someone, even if that's not normally your thing. And then again, it could be that if a relationship, a close bonded relationship where you have invested, but it's never really set you on fire, I do mean obviously proverbially, this is a set of influences at the moment that can really see you thinking about whether you should start afresh. Not trying to put the downside on situations, I'm just trying to be truthful. But when it comes to your talent, your flair, your artistry, you're going to absolutely shine over the next month. And if you want to pull a new admirer to you, believe me, even if you can't go out and strut your stuff, you can feel like you can strut your stuff from the comfort of your home. You can get your wardrobe out, you can slap on a new look, perhaps cut your hair or dye your hair in some way. This is a time for you to be absolutely ravishing, because that will rivet someone's attention on you, believe me. So that brings us to Scorpio. Such a lot of energy in your fourth house, all about home, emotion, security. You've got those two, your traditional ruler of Mars and the exalted planet in your sign of Uranus in your seventh house of relating. They're squaring up to the cluster of energy in Aquarius, particularly obviously Mars to Mercury, which is retrograde, and Uranus to Saturn. And that's tough. So something is going on in your emotional home, family life, which is causing a lot of frustration for you. Perhaps you're trying to make changes at home and they just aren't happening quick enough. Perhaps you could feel a little bit sort of frustrated also that someone within the family doesn't truly understand some of your dilemma. If you're someone who loves your home environment, you could redecorate at this time, and beautifully and tastefully so. You may find yourself trying out some different experimental colour schemes. If you can come to an accord with the other people in your residency, it's going to be that better received. And I generally think that you're looking for a new kind of meaning right at the heart of your world. So even though the worldly side of our existences is often the one that most of us seem to talk about and think about. So, it's like the traditional thing for years is, the job we do, the places we visit, the cars we drive, the size of the property we live in. I think for you, this is a very profound time for the opposite of all that. It's about home, it's about family, it's about a sense of nurture, sense of belonging, being in nature will really appeal to you at this time. But also, you might strangely be very happy walking alone in nature, or it could be with someone you do feel very comfortable and at ease with. But that Venus conjunct Jupiter is sure lovely if you wanted to add to the family. So, Sagittarius. Well, the third house, the new moon, is brilliantly exciting because it's about ideas. And your sign's about ideas, but it's about more philosophical, the higher sphere. The third house is more about those everyday exchanges. So that can be text messages, emails, instant messages, chattering on the doorstep with a neighbour, saying hi to people on the way to work, getting in contact with our siblings. That's all the third house. It can also control technology, especially modern technology. The ninth house, which governs you, is about what does all this mean? Where is it all going? But at the moment, I feel that you feel alive. You're wanting to communicate much more with other people. It has been a couple of years where your spirit at times has really been deflated. You haven't felt a great sense of self-worth, especially if your finances in some way dried up and you couldn't really see what your purpose was or what your value to situations was. But now you're really coming through magnificently, I feel. So this is a great opportunity for you to really sparkle. What's the catch? Just don't try to do too much, because with Mars squaring with the retreating Mercury and Uranus squaring with Saturn, if you overload yourself, try to be too virtuous, you're going to feel really stressed out. And over this next 4 weeks, things will get a bit brittle. So stay with the things that truly excite you. But you could have a conversation with someone and really Cupid can really shoot its arrow. And of course, we're very close to Valentine's Day now, only 3 or 4 days away. And with Venus and Jupiter so beautifully poised, it could be a person who, like you, enjoys a little bit of personal independence, but gets there are times when by collaborating and being close, there are also some beautiful moments to share. Capricorn. So all this energy is in the second house of foundations. Foundations very earthy. It's governed by your fellow earth sign of Taurus, where of course Mars, which is exalted in your sign, and Uranus currently reside. Now those two are pushing you to really take a walk on the wild side and be a bit counterintuitive to your normal approach to resources. And that means if you have an instinct about something which you feel does deserve a little bit of speculation, you may decide to have that punt. But I wouldn't bet anything you can't afford to lose, quite frankly, because even if you're coming up with some novel schemes to earn money, which you could be, because Aquarius for you is very much about thinking outside the box, but it could be something you've been working on for some while is beginning to really shape up, and it's looking exciting. And I wouldn't therefore be too quick to be too edgy in your approach. Your great quality is your steadfastness, your ability to conduct due diligence and be very precise in checking information out. So your caution is your great quality. And of course your ruler is Saturn, and that is now in your second house. So there could be an income stream that has become a bit pinched, but I think you may be investigating another one which looks really promising. And it really wouldn't be a surprise if some extra money came in for you over the next 4 weeks. But I think the most delightful thing for you would be to really relish your qualities as a person too. Aquarius. Now, probably the first house new moon is one of the most glorious because it's all about the individual, and you're very much about the collective. Of course, you understand that you want to have your sometimes unique observations heard, and you need a bit of personal space. That goes without saying. But I think this stellium of energy in your sign, despite the fact that Mercury is retrograde, suggests you're really coming into your own. But the thing that's blocking you a bit is something to do with your home or emotions or family life or immediate environment. You're feeling frustrated and penned in. Keep the faith. You are evolving something that's really, really quite special. It's just going to require a bit more time. Remember, the first house is very Aries, so it's when we instigate something. So what you're setting your intentions to now on this new moon is going to come to pass down the track, particularly when we get to the Pisces new moon. So for now, be really excited about things. Try to stay cool. If there is a bit of stress bobbing around, there are some irritations, there's some unpredictability, there's some people being very bruising in what they're saying to you in terms of how you're receiving it emotionally. Stay strong because you're really close to the golden prize. Now, Pisces, as ever, you may be the one that I'm talking about last, but you're definitely not the least. And one of the reasons for that, Pisces, do you know, is because you are an accumulation of all the other 11 zodiac signs. You have so many enriching qualities. And of course, Jupiter is your co-ruler or co-regent. Jupiter being about growth, about optimism, about luck, international travel, particularly to do with ships in your particular sign. And Jupiter also throws you a bonus ball this year because it's going to join you in the middle of May and be with you through to the end of July, and then come back the last 3 days of 2021. So it's quite a short journey for Jupiter in your sector of philosophy and psychology this year. And that can be to your advantage, despite the fact that Jupiter will be going retrograde for much of the time. It just nibbles into your sign. Now, it is possible, because of all this 12th house energy, as far as your sun being the first, is that you are feeling very nostalgic, and you could be having a lot of conversations with siblings. You could also be talking to neighbours. There could be some gossip doing the rounds, and it's important that you don't contribute or get involved in any dramas in that regard, because hidden information can come up, can be harmful in and out, you know. The usual culprit is obviously that well-known social media platform, but if you can use this opportunity, particularly with Mercury in retrograde in the 12th house, to think very, very deeply about what you truly want from life. And I think you need people more than you might think, and you may need collectives of people. You may need people who give you a bit of space, understand the fact that you can be a bit dreamy, but you can also be mightily authoritative at times, hugely sacrificing at times, and warm and very, very kind. But also you can go to the opposite end of the spectrum and need to withdraw because you feel that you give so much that other people don't appreciate it. It makes you resentful, and at that point it can poison your spirit. So I think at the moment there's a lot of energy bubbling around your situation, which is asking you to think very deeply. So if you have some time away from other people, or just dependent on the people you can utterly rely upon, and just take some time out to think, do. But I feel that your subconscious is going to be very lively. This would be a great time to write a journal, to perhaps write your memoir, to do some careful research, speak to a counsellor, have any kind of healing therapy, if it's possible, in the domain, state or country that you live in with COVID, then this can be a very, very positive time for you. But it is a time of more reflection, and that nostalgia may call out to you very, very strongly. And perhaps for some Pisces people, even the potential to move back to areas that you're very, very familiar with, because you are probably the most sentimental, and I mean this in a very praiseworthy way, sign of all, because of the role of Neptune. The role of Jupiter is very much to do with history and philosophy, and Neptune's to do with much less perceptible energies. I've got Jupiter and Neptune conjunct in my first house, in my natal chart in Scorpio. So I can really get this, and it means my fifth house of expression is actually in Pisces. So I know a lot of Pisces people and get on very well with a lot of Pisces people. Feel that side of you, which can be a little bit more cool at times, is being challenged, and you are being asked to get in touch with that deeply feeling side of your nature. So that concludes all the zodiac sign forecast. Please stay safe. Happy Aquarius new moon. Good luck and goodbye.